All right, so let's go ahead and install Android Studio. It's very simple. You can just head off to Google and write install Android Studio as such, and you're gonna get a few hits. So just go to either one of these links here. I'll just go to straight to go to download. Just click there. And in this case here, this is what you should see if you're watching this right now. But of course, Android Studio as an IDE changes constantly, or at least the engineers are making it better. So things may be different by the time you watch this. This could be a different logo, but the idea is that this is where you need to come anytime you need to install Android Studio. You can scroll down to see what Android Studio has to offer. Okay, so all we're gonna do is just click here, download Android Studio. Of course, it will ask you to read some terms and conditions. You can do that, scroll down, and then say, I have read, all is good, and I'm gonna click, and the download process will start. Now, this may take a little bit, depending on your computer and the speeds that you have and so forth. And the other thing that you have to realize, or at least you should be aware of, is that when you want to download Android Studio is a very heavy IDE, so your computer has to be set up to handle that. So if you scroll down, you're going to see here says system requirement, so for Mac, Linux, Chrome OS, and so forth. But we are talking about Windows, and so these are the system requirements that you have to be aware of. So it has to be 64-bit Microsoft Windows 8 or 10, and all of these requirements. And you can see we have all of these system requirements that you have to have in order for this to work. All right, so this is still downloading. Give it a few minutes and we'll be back. Okay, now we see that it was downloaded. Let's double click to start the installation process. Okay, and this may happen to you. All we have to say here is just say, yes, it's verified, to say that all is good, and we can continue. So now we're gonna go ahead. You can see we have this window here. We can say next, and all is good. Just leave as it is. I'm gonna say next. So this is a location that's picked to install Android Studio. That's fine. I'm gonna say next again, and that's fine. In this case here, you can say do not create shortcuts if you don't want to. I'm just going to leave as it is and say install. And it's going to start installing all the dependencies, all the modules that are needed for Android Studio to work. Okay, after a few moments, you should see this completed. Let's go say next. And he's going to start Android Studio. I'm going to say finish, such. Take a few seconds. And we should see, there we go. Android Studio is started, and it's going to ask us if we want to import Android Studio settings. So this assumes that we already have Android, or had, I should say, Android Studio installed and set up on our machine. In this case, this is the first time. I'm just going to say do not import settings, because I actually have none. So just click OK, and you should see something like this. Now, it's very important for what we're going to be doing that we have this Arctic Fox Android Studio or higher, because that's what's needed for creating modern applications using Jetpack Compose. Okay. All right. So I'm going to say don't send for now. And there you have it. We need to update a few things. In this case, just click update. So whatever that is asking us to do at this point of setting up, we need to just say yes, because Android Studio knows better. And because we need to restart a few things now, let's go ahead and restart Android Studio. Okay, that's very good. And after a few moments, you should see this. Okay, so now it says welcome. That means all is good. I'm going to say next. I'm going to use the standard Android Studio. You can change to your liking if you want. You can say custom. You can customize. I'm going to say standard for now. I'm going to say next. And in this case, you can use a dark color. So it's a darker color. I like that best. But if you don't want that, you can use light. Whatever you want to use, that's fine. I'm going to keep on dark color. Say next. And if you want to review or change any of these, that's all good. That means all of these settings will be set up for us, so we don't have to worry about anything. So standard, that's totally fine. I'm going to say finish. So now what's going to do is going to go ahead and install all the components, tools, and everything that we need to have in order for us to be able to write Android applications and use the emulator to emulate that to test our apps. Okay, this may take a few seconds, so just be patient and wait until all is done. In most cases, you won't have this problem that says unable to install Intel Haxum. So what this is a way to make the emulator to work faster on your machine, because when you are using emulators on Android development, which is connected to Android Studio, it takes up a lot of memory and it's really heavy on your CPU. So Haxum is a component that when installed on your machine, it will will help with the accelerated virtualization, which means really just to make sure that I create a virtual machine within this main machine so that the emulator can run on. Okay, so because of the setup that I have on this Windows machine, this is not possible. Now, if you have an issue such as this, there's a way to fix this that I will share with you later. In this case, we should be okay for now. Okay, so I'm going to say finish. And once that is done, you can see that we can create a new project and so forth. And while we're here, let's go ahead and create that new project. Okay, so because we are going to talk about compose, there's different ways to start our Android project. What are we going to do here? We're going to start with an empty compose activity. Let's say next, and voila. So the next thing we need to do here is notice that we can give a name to our application. I'm going to say my test app as such, and you can give a package name. You just leave as it is, and this is the location where this is going to live, this project. And of course, we're going to use Kotlin. That is the default language, as you see there. Okay. All right. So the other thing you notice here is that we have minimum SDK where this will be run on. That's fine. API 21. That's totally fine. If we want, we can go higher. In this case, you could use the latest one, but notice the higher you go, the less devices are supported. So we're just testing things. Let's just get to API 29. That's fine. All right. I'm going to go ahead and say finish. And now you can see that Android Studio has started. Okay, very well. So there we go. We have Android Studio and tells us what's new. This is the assistant. You can always hide it from there. Very good. And it's loading our first project there. So we'll take a few seconds. Now, just keep in mind that this process may take a while. So just be patient while the whole project is being indexed. It's getting in all the dependencies, the SDKs, and all that great stuff in the background. So just be patient with this. All right, so after a few moments, you can see that everything is indexed. You can see there's no loading at the bottom here, so that's good news. And now it's going to ask us to build and refresh to hopefully see some sort of preview here of our compose code that is written there. Okay, so it looks like it says failed to install the following Android Studio SDKs, as some licenses have not been accepted, right? So to build this project, accept the SDK license agreements and install the missing components. And it says here using the Android Studio SDK Manager. So Android Studio SDK Manager is here. So hover over to the right. So I'm going to click that. So let's go ahead and install that one there, which is Android 11 R. And let's see what else we need to do. I think that's fine for now. Okay, I'm going to say apply. I'm going to say okay. I'm going to accept. So this is what needed to be done. I'm going to say accept, say next, and now it's going to install those components, and we have accepted all the licensing and so forth. Again, this might take a few minutes, so just relax and we should be back. Okay, after a few moments, notice that everything has been installed successfully. I'm going to say finish, just say okay, get out of there. In this case here, let's go ahead and refresh again. Okay, looks like everything is looking good. Take a little bit to do some building out internally. Just wait for a second here. Okay, looks like the build was fine and our preview is taking its own time. Let's go ahead and close this down so hopefully we can have more space here. Still analyzing our code, and voila, the preview is there. It's very, very small. Okay, so if I come here and where we're passing this Android, I could say and me like that. You can see as you change, the preview right away shows exactly what's going to be showing, right? So hello Android me. Now the other thing we need to do is to make sure that, okay, of course, obviously this is just the preview of what we are composing here. This is the beauty of Jetpack Compose, is that we can actually use this code directly and starting to compose our user interfaces, which is why this is very exciting. But of course, we also want to be able to run this app, if you will, this user interface on an emulator. Okay, so we need to install that as well. To do that, we go to the top where it says AVD Manager. That stands for Android Virtual Device Manager. I'm going to click there, and then we're going to click Create Virtual Device as such. Okay, so you can pick whatever you want, but I always like to pick something that has this Play Store. It's going to be more apparent as we go through this course. So all right, so Pixel 4, that's fine. I'm going to say next. And it says here, recommendation, your CPU does not support VTX. Okay, so like I said before, in your case, you shouldn't have this problem, okay? Because again, the settings that I have on my Windows here, it doesn't have that, okay? But now if you end up having this problem, don't get alarmed. There are ways to solve this. Number one, you make sure that all the system requirements on your computer are up to par. That's very important. And number two, just don't panic if this is the problem that you may encounter, okay? It's something that can be fixed, in most cases anyway. All right, so if you don't see this and everything is great, all you have to do is then go to download the actual release name, in this case the API level that is needed for our selected image, in this case for our emulator. So you would do this, click there, and this would happen. Okay, so we have that component finished. Again, this may take a long time, so just wait until it's all done. And we go ahead and say finish, okay? And in this case here, I'm going to see it's there. We're going to select that. I'm going to say next. And then that's when you would, of course, leave the name or change the AVD name. And emulator performance, you will change to automatic, right? That's what we have. Of course, in your case, you will have other options here, but automatic is fine. And then you're going to go and finish. Again, for us, it's not going to work because our CPU does not support VTX, virtualization X, and so forth, okay? All right, so in this case, again, I'm going to go ahead and say finish. And you're going to create Android virtual device. All right, resume. There we go. There's that virtual device there. And in your case, you could go ahead and say actions launch that virtual device. And of course, for me, it's not going to work. But for your case, this should launch the AVD. So we should be good. And at this point here, you could just go ahead and of course it would show here and click on this run button and it would run this app on your virtual device. All right, there you have it. You should have Android Studio set up for development.